Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You're watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and as I continue my COVID World interview series, I had to include Sweden. How could I forget Sweden? And this morning, I am very happy to share Timo Söderlund, and he is a patient advocate of aortic disease. And I'm very grateful to him for taking this time to share with us. Timo, thank you so much for joining Conversations with Jennylyn.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Timo, you are a patient of aortic disease. You're a patient advocate. Tell me why.
Yeah, I was working in normal business until I got ill in 2012, and I got ill all of a sudden at work, and my life changed in a matter of hours. So from being a successful businessman traveling to many places in the world, I all of a sudden was in an ambulance going to a hospital for acute cardiac surgery, and they had to repair both my heart and my aorta. And when I woke up, everything had changed. I had got minor brain damage, and I couldn't continue to work. So my road back was quite long with rehab, and I, among other things, had great help from a brain damage center that helped me regain some of my skills I had before I got ill, but not all of them.
Oh no.
And yeah, so as a part of this training, they suggested that I put my focus to something. And since I couldn't continue to travel or work, I chose to use my energy on my illness. So I decided to learn as much as possible and to get engaged. And that I have done now I've been ill for almost 8 years, but I've been very active as a patient in various forms, I would say 6 years in different projects.
So what did you lose as a result of your illness?
I lost my old life. I had gold cards on many airline companies. I was working in the Middle East, in China, in Europe. I traveled to many places. I worked as a CEO and what could you say, executive consultant who helped companies in distress by doing a lot of fast actions to save the companies.
Okay.
None of that I could continue. So I lost all of that. And my life changed. I haven't been in an airplane for 8 years.
Are there restrictions? You're not allowed to go on airplanes, or are you choosing not to go?
I choose myself.
Okay.
There is certain risks, but they can be overcome. But I've had some friends who have been brought from airplanes with ambulances when they got ill during flight. And it can be that the cabin pressure drops, or just the stress that the blood pressure goes up. You know, patients like myself, we have a replacement for part of our aorta, and we have perhaps very big aneurysms connected to the remaining part of the aorta that is not mended. So a high blood pressure is very dangerous for people like us. I eat 10 medications every day to keep my blood pressure on a very low level. And if it spikes, which it can do, under enormous stress, if you get very scared during flight, then there's nowhere to go. You're on airplane. So I did choose not to fly anymore.
Okay.
But I have friends who fly. I have friends who fly.
Would you say that you were practicing an unhealthy lifestyle previous to this illness? And when I say that, I mean that you were living a decadent lifestyle and you weren't exercising and watching your
No.
diet. Or were any of these factors true?
I can. You are partly correct, but partly not.
Oh.
I was working very much, so I was really looking after myself and not drinking too much alcohol and such, because I was very sharp and working a lot. I worked like people do in Asia, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I was very active. But I had been exercising when I was younger, running marathons and so on, but I had stopped doing that. And with age, I had become a little bit bigger, and but I really didn't have any health problems.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit high blood pressure, but it came as a lightning from the clear sky when I got ill.
Wow.
I have no warning.
Wow. So were you sitting at work and then suddenly you toppled over?
Yeah.
Just
It was like having a heart attack. So when they brought me from work to the hospital in the morning with the ambulance, they thought I had a heart attack. So they spent 6 hours trying to figure out why they couldn't detect the heart attack, until a new doctor came in and he made a CT scan, and then they saw that what was the problem. So it's a very difficult diagnose. Many people die. It's one of the more difficult diagnoses to make in an emergency room, because the time is very short. If the aorta starts to bleed, you have about 5 to 6 liters of blood in your body, and with a heart rate of 70 beats per minute, your whole blood volume is circulated every minute. So if you start to bleed fast from a rupture in the aorta, you die within 20-30 seconds.
wow.
So it's a very traumatic event.
Yes, we take all of these vital organs in our bodies for granted. We
Yes.
never really realize how much we need them to survive until they shut down.
No.
Because I'm listening to you thinking, I hope I'm taking good care of my heart. When you think of how easily it could just shut down and you could be gone. And as I listen to your story, I can tell you of 4 people that have popped into my mind who weren't as fortunate as you are, because clearly you had help around to save your life. They were
Yes.
alone and they died.
The terrible thing when you say like that is that 75%, 3 out of 4 of every person on the planet don't have access to cardiac surgery when this happens. So the people who are saved are only the people in the very rich countries, United States, France, Italy, Sweden. Most people, they don't stand a chance because there is no cardiac surgeons to save them. 75% are in places in the world where they will just die. And that is one of the big things that is engaging me right now, is so how do you help people in those places? Can you do anything to help them? And that's where I'm teaming up now, my next big project in the world. And that is prevention.
I'm so proud of you. So very few people, when things happen, when they're blessed, stop to think about the other people who are less fortunate. I'm very thrilled that you were putting energy into thinking of creative ways to help other people who may have this misfortune. But in your case, it wasn't, because you're here doing this interview with me, and from where I sit, I see a very healthy man.
Well, I can also tell you that when I survived, my wife and myself, we decided to give something back, to say thank you for the additional life I've got. So we went to the hospital that saved my life, Sahlgrenska in Sweden, and we wanted to give them a donation of money to use for aortic diseases. And the lady who is in charge of the hospital for the cardiac surgery, she said, no, I want you to use that money. Use it to do good and come back and tell us what you have done. And
Really?
yes, and I've been there. So the original donation wasn't so very big. I've been there many times telling them about all the projects. So far, my family used about 7 to 8 times more money than the original donation. So we have been running projects globally now for a few years to help people to set up local awareness programs and so on. So it's been a big joy in my life.
I love this story. It's a great story. So you see, God saved your life and you had a
Yes,
purpose. Now you are
yes.
making a difference and probably encouraging and helping to save many others.
Exactly what you are saying now to me is what my cardiac surgeon told me the day after he saved my life. He said, I wasn't sure you were going to survive. I can only tell you one thing. I don't know why you survived, but I can tell you one thing. There must be a purpose why you are still here. And that is what has been guiding me the whole time. What is my purpose? What can I do? Because I couldn't continue to work. So I found my purpose in patient advocacy, trying to help others. And then I feel more, it's more rewarding towards myself to help people who have very little than to do things for just a few people who already have it all. So a lot of the things I've been doing have been in places like Bangladesh. We had a very big project in Bangladesh running, and well, we see what will happen next. But we are looking into some new exciting things.
It's so funny. Just as you were speaking, I was going to ask you, as you look at your life now and the life you lived prior to this
Mm.
situation that's led you to the new life path,
Mm.
how do you look and say, I miss traveling, I miss saving companies, or are you feeling more fulfilled in what you're doing now?
I'm going to be very honest now.
That's why I'm asking this question.
I had to see a therapist for 3 years to cope with that because it was a big loss. It was almost like, well, I don't know what to compare it to, but it was like a divorce from myself. It was very, very hard. So I didn't need to go to medications for depression, but I needed therapy. So I found a therapist who worked with people close to the end of life, who works with people who are going to die quite soon with cancer and so on. And that person really understood me because I was, in the beginning, I was very afraid. I didn't know, will I live for 2 more days or for 5 more days? I was very insecure. Uh, So it was a long process to handle that, and also to part from that part of myself. And today, well, I would say some days, when I look up in the sky and I see airplanes, there's not so many airplanes now with Corona, huh? But the few you see, yes, I can think back and how exciting it was. I can miss it. But got something else instead. And this is also fantastic. I think both things are fantastic. They are, but I could never have combined the both. It's too much energy in each process. So
Well, there are people who don't believe in God, but I do. And I think sometimes his vision and his purpose and plan for us is not always the same as the one we have for ourselves. Because I'm sure you wonder who's behind all of this. I've gone from there to here. But I must ask you this. In a world where we are measured by what we have, how much money, who we know, and where we live, do you feel sometimes when you look at where you are now and where you were before, and I'm not saying you've lost any of that, but do you feel less than because you're not in the go-go world,
Yeah, I understand the question.
Yeah.
I would say that, I have a brother-in-law who also survived a close call to death. He got a very severe cancer, and to save him, they had to make a very huge surgery on his chest.
Yes.
And he almost died. And then they treated him with chemo and so on, and he also almost died from that. So he almost died from everything. And we are very good friends today because we very much share the view on certain things. And we just discussed this topic the other day about our friends who still live in the fast world. They don't understand because they can't understand. Sometimes we tell them that, please, just what will you do with all your money and your boats and your cars and all your houses if you get ill? It's all worthless. You won't appreciate it. But I think that's the way we are as people. When we are healthy, we think we will live forever, and we just collect stuff. We think stuff will make us happy. That's how we are trained.
Yes, it's true. That's why I had to ask you this, because there are people in the world who've never had. And so they can't even relate to where you were and what you were doing, because their entire life has been a struggle. Maybe not with a disease, but maybe just to survive. So someone like you who had, the corporate life, and clearly all that money could buy to make you comfortable and probably more. And now you find yourself no longer part of that world, and you're in a world where you have a disease and you have limitations in what you can do. It allows you to compare those two lives. And that's why I wanted to see your perspective on the place in the middle that you are now. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
When your days are counted, if you know that you will die 2 days from today, you know that. Your doctor is telling you will die now. Then there are only a few things that matter, really. It's the people you love and your relations. Not one single item, not one single money, not one single house is important. The only thing that is important when life is coming to an end is love and relations. And I think all people who have been very close to death know this, because they know that there is no going back once you leave. But I think it's also human not to understand that before it's time.
I think we understand what we stop to look at and what we stop to pay attention to and what we open ourselves to. And one of the things that's always struck me, and it's so obvious, Steve Jobs, one of the most powerful men that we knew, he just died. And nothing could have stopped his life, even though he had a transplant and whatever. He still had to die. And he left messages about this behind. And yet I see some people just go, 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 go. And I don't know if they didn't listen, if they're not watching, but I feel like our world needs more balance. And this is when I'm going to bring up COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's forced everyone to stop. What do you think about COVID-19 and the impact it's having on the world right now?
I think it can be a game changer, but we don't know that yet, because if it ends up going in a cycle of perhaps one or two more phases, and then it's gone and we have a vaccine, there is a probability, I think, that life is going back much to what it was. So everything, the engines will start up again, and the businesses will thrive, and so on. We really don't know that yet, because we don't know if there is a vaccine that will work. And if that doesn't happen, we will see a different world. Less travel. Travel will become very expensive compared to what it was. You know, you could fly from Sweden to almost any place in the world for the less than $1,000. You will never be able to do that again, because so many airline companies are going bankrupt. And also, like cruise boats, who wants to go on a cruise boat if you are afraid that there's coming a new pandemic?
Yes.
So I think our world will change, but if they find a vaccine, we all felt it change, but it goes back. But we don't know. It could be something that will change our world to something, I think, to the much better, because the nature needs it, and people are starving, and we are just consuming and using the resources of the earth in a very, very high speed. So I think what is happening, if we take away the terrible thing with death and so on, but the slowing down of economies and slowing down of human activity, I think that is very positive in certain aspects.
Well, how has COVID been affecting you? Because you have to be very careful that you have a disease. Have you been extremely quarantined? Tell us how you're coping with this.
Yeah, I've been at home for 7 weeks now. I very seldom leave the house. If I leave the house, I have breathing protection, which I use.
Yes.
I went to the dentist the other day, and I was very careful when I went there. But I'm mostly at home. Very boring, because I don't meet my brothers-in-law for lunch and so on. But I also have a lot of friends who are medical doctors, and there is a very sad part about this, that many people who are severely ill, they do like me, they stay at home, and then they get some pain, and instead of calling the emergency room, they stay at home and think perhaps it will go over. So all over the world, all the big hospitals are seeing a dramatic downfall in the number of patients coming in for cardiac arrest, for heart attacks, for aortic problems. It doesn't mean that these problems have stopped, but it probably means, and that will be proven later on with research, that a lot of people are dying at home instead of seeking care, because they are afraid of going to the hospital, not to get COVID, or they don't want to go to the hospital because they know that they have limited resources, and they think, well, perhaps I should stay at home with my problem, since they are so busy with the COVID patients. So I think this is, and I have experienced that myself. I've been ill 2 times now. I'm not sure if I have the corona, but I've had an appendix, which they had to treat with medication. And right now I have something in my hand that also turned very bad, and I had to go to the doctor also. But there I used telemedicine to get antibiotics.
Okay.
Mm.
Now, when you were speaking, I was thinking that some of the numbers being reported as corona deaths may very well be exactly what you've just described. People not wanting to go to the hospital because of all of the reasons you mentioned, and they die, and maybe their deaths are being recorded as a corona death. What is the death toll like today in Sweden, if you know the latest?
I think there is, you can see it also in a different way, because since I have all the time in the world, I looked up the official death statistics in Sweden.
Please share with us.
Yes, and actually the death count is much higher right now than what the normal death count plus the corona is, which indicates that there is even more people dying. And so there is a discrepancy in the Swedish death numbers with about 10% additional deaths beside the added corona deaths compared to a 5-year average. And this is probably people dying from other diseases as a result of that the hospitals don't have resources.
Yes, and stress. People are stressed out, people are fearful, and there's so many reasons now that, you know, people who are already compromised can expire. So I think that, you know, it's a very sad time for this world. Would you say that Sweden was hit as hard as some of the other countries, or do you think that you guys were, you got off easy?
We're a small country. We are 10 million people.
Mm-hmm.
In United States, you are, I think, 330 million.
Yes.
So if we look in relation to the people, we are hit much harder than America right now.
Really? I'm surprised.
Yes. We have a higher mortality than United States of America. You have very high mortality in New Jersey and in New York.
Yes.
But if you look on the total of your country, Sweden has a higher death rate.
I am truly shocked to hear that. But let me ask you, why do you think this has happened?
That what?
That you have been hit harder than the US when you put it in perspective of numbers.
I think perhaps we haven't seen the final outcome for America yet, because you got it a little bit later than we got it. So perhaps your figures will continue to grow a little bit as it spreads to new places in America. It sure looks like New York had its baddest times already, but there are other cities where it can start up. I think in Sweden, we chose a very liberal way. Our neighbor countries, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, they did a hard shutdown. They closed the schools, closed the restaurants, they closed everything to save their people. We didn't do that. We kept our society open.
What type of government mandates did you have? Any?
Well, we have a government, and they stood behind it. They have a government agency called Swedish Health Agency, and they decided not to shut down Sweden. So when Norway was shutting down the whole country, our government said we can only have people meeting at venues with maximum 500 people. 500 people in one room, and Norway was shutting down.
Crazy.
So, and this was simultaneously. Sweden had 1 dead, Norway had 1 dead. Today, Sweden have 3,200 dead, and Norway have 200 dead.
Wow.
Today, only today, the authorities reported that the last 24 hours in Sweden, we had 135 deaths. Norway, the last 30 days, had less deaths than we have now in 1 day. So our death count is very high here. But you know, they have been using Sweden in media all around the world, showing people sitting at restaurants, laughing and so on, and say, look at these guys. They don't shut down their society. Well, they forgot to tell the viewers that we actually die quite a lot here compared to in other countries.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's such a notch.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Or something so serious. And you know,
it's terrible. So it's a little bit like an experiment, you know, because everybody is saying we will see in a year or in 3 years what will happen if Sweden actually had more deaths. So I think it's a big gamble. Because where I base my opinion is looking at what happened in United States of America 100 years ago when the Spanish flu hit America.
Yes.
And there is a lot of studies being done on different big cities in USA, and some cities shut down. Other cities did have their parade and everything should continue like before. And what all these studies shows is that the society or city that did shut down, they suffered in the long run only half of the deaths as those who kept society open and running. And I think that is what we will see in Sweden too. But our chief scientists think the world has changed in 100 years. I don't think the virus understands that there has gone 100 years.
The virus doesn't care. The virus doesn't care. It's just here to destroy. So we have to care. You know, whenever I'm doing an inspiring interview like this, the time flies. We are down to 2 minutes. What do you want to leave with my viewers before we're completely out of time?
To take care of today. Life is today. Today is a good day. Be kind to the people you love. Don't go to sleep being angry. Always remember that perhaps tomorrow I can't meet the people I love anymore. Cherish the moment. Live today, not tomorrow. We don't know what happens tomorrow. And be kind to other people. I think kindness comes back. If you are kind, others are kind to you. That's what I would like to give them.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I want you to know that I've done at least 20 countries. I've gone around doing this. And the common thread that I have noticed is the countries that quarantined early and are still under quarantine, they have less people dead. So there is some truth to not being out 500 people hanging out and partying. Tell your government.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And, you know, I'm going to stay in touch with you because I want to make sure that you are staying positive and doing well.
Please do. Please
and I'm very, very grateful that you were able to afford the time to do this with me. And you were great. I know you were concerned about what you would say, but this was great.
It's thanks to you. You made it very easy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired, and I'm sure you're going to gather a lot of inspiration from Timo, this very positive young man. Stay safe, stay corona-free, and we'll be in touch.